The US is expected to remove its military contingent from Afghanistan in 2014, with many still unsure what would that mean for the future of the whole region. That and many other regional and international issues we're discussing with India's Foreign Minister, Mr. Salman Khurshid. Many thanks for joining us for this interview.
Pleasure.
My first question to you would be, you've come to Moscow on the back of international conference on the future of Afghanistan. The removal of the military contingent, the US contingent from the country, what would that mean for the region and for Afghanistan in particular?
We feel, and I think that this is the position that we share with Russia, is that Afghanistan must take the call. They must decide the pace and they must decide the alternatives to put in place when the US forces withdraw. They still have to sign their bilateral strategic agreement, which is the basis on which the remnants of the forces that will continue for purposes of training, etc., will remain. So now there's still a whole lot of details to be worked out. We've only said one clear thing, that it's important that Afghanistan should be absolutely comfortable about this changeover from the US presence to their own security forces, and we will do whatever is necessary to help them equip and build capacity, and indeed at the same time make a major commitment to development of Afghanistan.
Do you think Afghanistan is capable of fighting terrorism on its own without the presence of the US military contingent?
I think there are two ways of looking at it. One is that whether it's terrorism or any form of unwholesome opposition to an elected government, ultimately it has to be done by the people themselves as represented by the government. And to get an inclusive, peace sustainable model within Afghanistan, which is actually worked by the Afghan people and decided by the Afghan people, is something that we all support.
You were quoted for saying that Afghanistan may face terrorism threats coming from abroad. By that, do you mean Pakistan?
There are considerable issues on Afghanistan's eastern border, and I'm sure that they know it better than anyone else. This is only as a flagging of concerns that all of us who are friends of Afghanistan and the stakeholders within the neighborhood of Afghanistan, who must keep in mind in helping Afghanistan chart out its own course ahead of 2014.
Are there any concerns in India that the withdrawal of US contingent from Afghanistan may lead to an increase of the Pakistani influence in Afghanistan?
Well, this could be a concern. This is a matter that would be required to be factored in by Afghanistan itself. But at the end of the day, it's not what we think that's important. I think it's what Afghan people think that's important. And we've only insisted that Afghan people be allowed to make free choice about what is their destiny and who they would want to work with. I don't think anyone on the outside should be dictating to Afghanistan. But having said that, it is our duty and obligation as friends of Afghanistan to give them the advice, warning and caveats that we believe are objectively necessary in their being able to make up their minds as to what they want to do.
Would you be willing to then persuade maybe the United States to stay if it somehow endangers the situation in Afghanistan?
That's a very difficult question, because I do understand the United States public opinion is strongly against their staying on. Again, there are views about to what extent will the United States stay on even after it withdraws its operational troops. So these are very complicated issues, and I think they have to be examined objectively by the Afghan government and Afghan people. All of us who are frankly friends of Afghanistan, we owe it to them to help them decide objectively and decide in a manner without any pressure, both from within or from without.
What role will the Taliban play in the new power structure in Afghanistan, and is India considering it a threat to itself?
A distinction has been drawn between the Al-Qaeda and Taliban, and the distinction between the good Taliban and the not-so-good Taliban or bad Taliban. These are distinctions that we don't draw as far as we are concerned. But if there has to be an inclusive settlement within Afghanistan, and the Afghan High Peace Council and the Afghan people feel that some form of inclusivity will provide sustainability to the peace agreement, then we will go along. Of course we will go along.
Let's move on a little bit farther away from Afghanistan and Pakistan. Let's talk about Syria. The US, the UK and Israel have been all saying in one voice that there are certain indications of chemical weapons and being used in Syria. Is that creating any concerns in India?
I think it's only fair that we be honest in our dealings with situations like the situation in Syria. I think we should not allow our personal preferences and ideologies to influence an objective decision that's to be taken. A complaint has been made by the Syrian government. You may like the Syrian government, or you may not like the Syrian government, but a complaint has been made about them about use of chemical weapons in a particular place. I think that should be investigated, and that should be taken to its natural conclusion. I don't think this should be allowed to be overwhelmed by a general proposition about without substantiation and without necessary evidence.
So what's your take then on the latest statements that the US may actually use force in Syria? How would that bring both sides to the end of the conflict?
Well, we would advise caution. I think our experience in recent years of use of force has not been good for anyone, least of all for the United States of America. And I would certainly advise caution, despite all the pressure that the group of countries that support action against Syria or the Syrian government have been putting on the United States.
I know it's rather premature to say and to speculate, but do you think will Syria avoid military confrontation?
We still hope that it will. I mean, we have signals of both nature, but we will continue to hope that dialogue is the way out of this very difficult situation, and we would certainly continue to advocate a greater dialogue and giving dialogue greater opportunity.
We know that India is striving to become the member of the UN Security Council, and Russia and the United States are supporting India in that push. How far are you on that? I mean, how realistic is the chance that India may become a member of the UN Security Council?
Well, a lot of people say it won't happen in our lifetime. A lot of people say that let's push and try a little bit harder. It's extremely important that the UN is reformed, the Security Council is reformed, that it becomes more reflective of the reality of our times. And the good thing is, of course, that we have major countries, as you just mentioned, US and Russia, supporting India in this quest, which is not India's quest alone, but I think it's the quest of those in all the countries in the world that believe that it's important that we bring UN up to contemporary reality.
Let's talk about China now. We know that after Moscow you'll be traveling to China in the nearest future to resolve this rather weird and interesting border incident.
No, it's not resolved, the border incident. We have a very wholesome relationship with China, which is not necessarily to be diluted because of incidents that happen periodically. This is something that's being handled already. It's something in which a dialogue is in process. So it may come up when I'm there, but it's certainly not the cause and reason and the main focus of my visit. It's possible that while I'm there, we can take up this issue and try and see if we can take it to a resolution quickly.
We know that both India and China are members of the BRICS. At the same time, India and China are the world's most populated countries, and China is on its way to become the world's largest economy. Do you feel that India is in some way losing the economic race with China, despite that it's being like two bordering countries and big populated countries? Well, do you feel there is a economic race between India and China?
Well, inevitably. I mean, if you're top 3 or top 4 in the world, you could see that in a form of a race, but you don't see that in a form of unhealthy competition. it's probably healthy competition. If we know China is there, we will not be lazy. Our business will be on its toes, and we would want to produce better and go further and offer better opportunities. That's part of the marketplace philosophy. So we don't see that as a problem. We see that as an opportunity.
India is one of the countries which passed the global recession in a rather good manner, didn't suffer a lot like many countries of Europe did. Now there's, with analysts speculating that another possible global recession is not ruled out. Do you think that India will have the same result should any major economic turmoil in the world happen again? Do you think India is ready for another hypothetical recession?
We slipped from 9% to 6%, which is tough for us. But we are quite hopeful. We don't have a pessimistic view about the world economy over the next 2 years. But both with our view that the world economy will shape up once again, and also that we have prepared ourselves for eventualities, I think in the next 2 years we hope to get back to 7 or 8%.
As we can see in the example of China, that the growing economy is getting more and more energy needs, and China is now becoming one of the world's main importers of energy resources from all over the world. In that sense, I have a question about nuclear energy. Where does India stand on the usage of nuclear energy, and is there any points of cooperation between India and Russia on that sense?
Well, absolutely. I think we are very strong partners in nuclear energy with Russia, and you know that the Kudakulam plant, which is with Russian collaboration and help, will get critical. The first unit will get critical now very shortly. The second unit will be ready by the end of the year. We think that for a country like India, with its huge population and in relative terms limited energy sources, nuclear energy is something that we cannot do without. We will have a mix in which nuclear energy will be a growing contribution. And there, our collaboration and cooperation with Russia is paramount. It's of extremely important contribution to India's energy supply.
Probably my final question. I did a preview reports for the just past BRICS summit in South Africa, where many experts, including the Deputy Foreign Minister of Russia, have been telling me that the role of the BRICS now is very, very important in the world. Its decisions somehow influence the major global decisions by the UN Security Council and by many major international organizations. Would you agree with that? Would you agree that the BRICS is now stronger than the initial idea of the organization?
Obviously, it's a growing concept. The idea was a visionary idea, and a lot of people doubted it as well. But I think now that we've done one round of summits, it's becoming very clear that there is an enormous potential. The fact that the West is beginning to express an interest and concern means that the impact and effectiveness of our collaboration is beginning to make sense to people and is beginning to become apparent to people.
Do you think at some point of time BRICS may become something of a counterweight to NATO, the EU and Western conglomerates?
I don't like to use the word counterweight because it would alarm people. It would cause negative concerns to people. I think we want to be partners in an organized way. We want to be partners in peace and prosperity. And whatever it takes to have that partnership grow forward, I think should come forth from everybody, including from the countries in the BRICS.
Thank you so much for this interview and finding time for us. Thank you.
Thank you.